On my birthday, my whole family gathered at a restaurant. Lively chatter filled the air. Just as I was about to raise my glass of wine, a waitress gently placed a small note into my hand. I opened it. Don't drink. Trust. My heart froze for a beat. I quietly swapped my wine glass with my daughter-in-law's. A few minutes later, calamity struck, and I knew this was only the beginning. Before we continue, don't forget to press like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments, because what's about to happen will leave you stunned. My name is Vivian Langford, 64 years old. I once thought this year's birthday would be peaceful, a simple dinner with my son Andrew Drew Langford and my daughter-in-law Lauren Whitlock. But the moment I stepped into Valenti's Trattoria in Dallas, I sensed something was off. The restaurant was crowded, golden lights glowing, the clinking of silverware echoing everywhere. Drew pulled out a chair for me, smiling brightly like the little boy he once was. Lauren sat across from me, her makeup perfect, her smile faint. She kept glancing at her phone, as if waiting for some invisible signal. I ordered veal marsala, Drew chose fettuccine alfredo, and Lauren only ordered a caprese salad, then looked at me. I have to watch my figure, unlike some people. Her tone was light, yet dripping with mockery. Drew froze. I ignored it, not wanting to turn the dinner into a battlefield. Drew poured the wine and raised his glass. To Mom, the woman who raised me all on her own, I'm grateful to you. My heart warmed. Lauren followed suit, her hand trembling slightly. To Vivian, a very special mother-in-law. The word special dropped into the air like ice. I smiled, didn't respond, and let the word hang coldly between the three of us. At that very moment, a young waitress approached. Her brown hair was tied neatly back, her eyes sharp, her movements swift. She replaced the napkin, adjusted the silverware, and in one discreet motion, slipped a folded note right beside my plate. No one noticed. When I looked up, her eyes locked onto mine. Clear, urgent. It wasn't a joke. I kept smiling at Drew, while my hand, hidden under the table, opened the note. Just one line, hastily written but unmistakable. Don't drink. The wine is poisoned. Trust me. The space before me seemed to freeze. I could hear the pounding of my own heart. If this was a prank, it was cruel. If it was real, someone at this very table wanted to end my life. I clenched the note in my palm, raising my head as if nothing had happened. Drew kept talking about his home renovation plans, about his new work bonus. Lauren's eyes, meanwhile, were on me, her polite smile so perfectly practiced it was nearly lifeless. I spoke evenly, my voice steady. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom for a moment. Inside the restroom, I locked the door and unfolded the note again. No signature, no explanation, just the command, don't drink. I stared into the mirror. My face looked calmer than I felt. My thoughts raced. If it was a mistake, why was I singled out? If it was true, who had access to my glass? And who was that waitress and what did she know? Fragments of memory flashed through me. The dizzy spells I'd had recently. Unexplained fatigue dismissed as old age. Lauren had once given me nutritional supplements in liquid form, saying they were good for my health. Drew told me I should rest more. Scattered pieces of memory suddenly began to align. I washed my hands, slipped the note into my purse. With suspicion weighing on me, I knew I had two choices. Dump the wine, too obvious. Refuse to drink, also suspicious. Or let the one who wanted to harm me reveal themselves. I needed truth, not just intuition. When I returned, I sat down as before. Drew asked, "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Keep going," I replied, my eyes flicking quickly to the two glasses before me. There was one clear difference: faint fingerprints on the stem, and a smudge of lipstick on Lauren's rim. I memorized the detail. The waitress stood at the end of the row of tables, stealing another glance toward us. That look swift, sharp, decisive, repeated like a silent alarm. She didn't know me, so why risk herself? Drew raised his glass again, once more to Mom. Lauren lifted hers too, smiling faintly. To health. I held the glass but didn't drink, pausing for just one breath. 4 words echoed in my mind. Don't drink. Trust. I looked directly at Lauren. Her smile faltered for an instant, as if waiting for something to unfold exactly as she had planned. I nodded at Drew, pretended to take a sip, then set the glass down. My voice was calm. Drew, could you order me some bruschetta with tomato and basil? I suddenly feel like eating. Of course. Drew turned to wave at the waiter. In that instant, Lauren's eyes darted quickly to my glass, a flicker she couldn't hide. And in that moment, my plan began to form. I kept my face composed, pretending the dinner was still perfectly ordinary. But deep inside, I had already decided. If someone wanted to watch me collapse tonight, then first they would have to show their true face. At the end of the table, the waitress had left, but I knew I wasn't alone. Someone out there knew something and had chosen to stand with me. As for me tonight, I would remain silent no longer. My hand brushed against my purse, where the folded note lay hidden. A single question lingered in my mind. If this is a trap, who set it, and how will I turn it so that no one erases the truth? Drew kept talking enthusiastically about the redesign plans for his house, his eyes full of excitement. Lauren, however, was unusually quiet, her gaze fixed on my wine glass like a cat stalking a bird. Every time Drew turned to speak to me, she would glance at the glass, waiting for the moment I would lift it. Then Drew stood to wave for more food, and I seized my chance. With one subtle movement, I switched my glass with Lauren's. The motion was swift, decisive, precise, so quick she didn't notice. When Drew sat back down, I smiled, raised the glass, and said evenly, to family, and to perfect moments. Drew clinked glasses. Lauren lifted hers as well, unaware of the switch. All 3 of us drank. The taste of the wine was rich, bold, familiar, but to me, it carried only the taut suspense of waiting. At first, nothing happened. Drew continued speaking, his voice bright with energy. Lauren forced a strained smile, adding short comments here and there. I nodded, but my eyes never left her every movement. And then, 5 minutes later, the fear I had carried burst into reality. Lauren pressed a hand to her chest, her brow furrowing. I feel strange, she muttered. Drew panicked immediately. What's wrong? You only had salad. Lauren tried to suppress her trembling, but her face drained of color in seconds. Cold sweat broke out across her forehead. She attempted to stand, but her legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed. Drew caught her, his voice cracking with fear. Lauren, what's happening? Somebody call 911. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Chairs toppled, shouts filled the air. Staff rushed over, calling emergency services. I sat still, my hand clenched tightly around the folded warning note. I leaned close to Lauren's ear, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. Did the wine taste good? Was it bitter? Her eyes widened in terror. She tried to speak, but her throat closed tight. For a brief second, her mask fell away, revealing pure, naked panic. Drew prayed desperately, calling his wife's name again and again. I watched the scene, but there was no relief in me, because the truth was clear. The person lying collapsed should have been me. From outside came the blare of approaching sirens, closer and closer. The restaurant was in an uproar, but inside my mind, one question echoed louder than all the noise. Why did she want me dead? Was Lauren acting alone, or was there another accomplice hidden within my family? The ambulance sirens split through the night, red lights sweeping across every street. I sat inside the vehicle, while Lauren lay motionless, her face pale as paper, her lips tinged with blue. Drew sat next to her, trembling, clutching her hand as he prayed under his breath. I remained silent, staring into the darkness beyond the window, my mind tightening like a vice. The one who should have been lying there was me. When we reached Dallas Methodist Medical Center, Doctors and nurses rushed in immediately. Drew was forced to wait outside the emergency doors. I sank into a cold plastic chair, listening to the metallic rattle of the gurney wheels fade down the corridor. The sterile air of the hospital cut like a knife, the sharp scent of antiseptic drilling into my already frayed nerves. Drew paced back and forth, tugging at his hair, his eyes red. "Mom, it has to be food poisoning, right? Maybe something wrong with the salad, not—" He trailed off, unable to finish, as though he couldn't believe his own weak excuse. I looked at my son, but said nothing. Inside me, suspicion had already begun to harden. This wasn't an accident. Every step had been planned. 2 endless hours dragged by like centuries. Finally, a young doctor approached, his face grave, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Are you the husband of Lauren Whitlock?" Drew jumped up. "Yes, how is she, doctor?" The doctor sat, exhaling deeply. "She survived the immediate crisis, but her condition remains very serious. Test results show an extremely high concentration of digitoxin in her blood." Drew frowned, confused. "Digitoxin? What is that?" "It's a cardiac drug. In small doses, it helps regulate the heart. But at the level found in her body, it can kill within hours." The words struck me like a bucket of ice water. Drew stammered, "You mean someone poisoned my wife?" The doctor's eyes were steady. "We can't speak to motives, but this quantity could never appear in her blood by accident. This was deliberate. We'll have to notify the police." Drew staggered back, his whole body shaking. His voice broke. No, that's impossible. Lauren, she's kind. Who would want to hurt her?" I turned to my son, my voice low but sharp. "Kind? Have you ever truly looked into her eyes, Drew? In those eyes, there has never been a single spark of light for me." He froze, speechless. My trembling hand reached into my purse, pulling out the folded note. I placed it into his palm. "Read this." Drew opened it. Just a few words, but enough to drain the color from his face. "Don't drink. The wine is poisoned." I told him everything about the waitress's urgent eyes, about the moment I switched the glasses, about the instant Lauren collapsed. With each word, Drew stiffened more, stammering, "No, it can't. You mean Lauren wanted to kill you?" I looked directly into my son's eyes, my voice like steel. "Not wanted to, Drew. She acted. If not for that note, the one lying in the emergency room right now would be me." The hallway fell into a suffocating silence. At that very moment, the doctor interjected, his tone grave. "We'll also need to draw blood from Mrs. Langford. Those dizzy spells you thought were from age, the irregular heartbeat, the fatigue, they may not be natural at all." Drew collapsed to the floor, burying his head in his hands, crying out in despair. "Oh God, this is too much. I can't take this." I placed a firm hand on his shoulder, my voice cold but steady. "No, Drew, this is only the beginning, and you must stay clear-headed, because the truth is far more terrifying than you can imagine." After the doctor left, only the heavy ticking of the wall clock filled the hallway. Drew sat hunched over, his head buried in his hands, as though his entire world had just collapsed before him. I looked at my son, the only flesh and blood I had, and my heart twisted with both anguish and a burning fury that refused to die. I drew a deep breath, then asked slowly, evenly, "Drew, I need you to tell me the truth. Has Lauren been acting strangely these past few months?" Drew lifted his head, his eyes swollen and bloodshot. He hesitated for a long time, then finally spoke words that sliced through me like a knife. "For months. Lauren has been saying you're forgetful, that you keep repeating old stories," she said. "Maybe it's time to think about putting you in special care." I froze. "You mean a nursing home?" He nodded, his voice breaking. "She even printed brochures with pamphlets about dementia. She said you showed obvious signs, forgetting to lock the door, retelling memories from years ago. And I believed her." I let out a bitter laugh, a sound laced with both pain and rage. "Unbelievable. I forget to lock the door once, and she calls it a symptom. I reminisce about your father, and she calls it senility. All just to push me into a home? Drew faltered, his voice cracking apart. I thought she cared about you. I thought her concern was real. I fought to hold back my anger, forcing each word. What else, Drew? Tell me everything. His hands shook, his fists clenching. She told me I should get you to sign over full financial power of attorney just in case you ever lost capacity. I nearly agreed. I shot to my feet, my eyes blazing. Power of attorney? So she didn't just want to lock me away, she wanted to strip me of everything. Don't you see, Drew? She was preparing my legal death. Drew burst into tears, his voice cracking in horror. 2 weeks ago, I even saw small white pill bottles in her purse. I asked, and she said they were vitamins. I believed her. But now, I realize, those must have been the drugs. I stood frozen, a chill running down my spine. Each puzzle piece locked into place. The dizziness, the so-called supplements, the false concern. None of it was random. I stared at my son. Do you see it now, Drew? The woman you thought loved you was turning me into a senile old woman so that when I collapsed, the world would call it natural. Tell me, will you still defend her? Drew screamed in agony. I hate myself. I hate that I trusted her more than I trusted you. I've helped her poison this family. I stepped closer, placing a hand firmly on his shoulder, whispering like a command. Lift your head, Drew. This is the moment you must choose. Will you be your mother's son or your wife's accomplice in her wicked game? Footsteps echoed down the hall. A nurse approached and spoke firmly. Mrs. Langford, the police would like to speak with you. The doctor also has additional test results. Drew helped me up. His hands trembled, weak as if all strength had drained away. The bitter thought struck me. My son, strong in the world outside, was utterly fragile when it came to facing the truth within his own family. Inside a small room, 2 detectives waited alongside the same doctor from earlier. The air felt thick, as though layered with ashes. The doctor opened a file, his voice heavy. We found only digitoxin in Lauren's blood. But in yours, Mrs. Langford, we detected several different heart medications accumulated over time. This indicates you've been absorbing small doses for a prolonged period. I gripped the edge of the chair. You mean, yes, he confirmed. The dizziness, the hazy memory, the irregular heartbeat, not simply age, more likely the result of chronic poisoning. The entire room fell silent. Drew collapsed into a chair, his eyes hollow. A silver-haired officer, introducing herself as Lieutenant Cassandra Owens, fixed her gaze on me. Mrs. Langford, have you frequently consumed food, drinks, or medicine prepared by Lauren recently? Memories poured in like a flood. I closed my eyes, speaking quietly. Yes, she often brought me drinks, pastries, soups, always insisting they were good for my health. Every time afterward, I felt exhausted. When I asked, she only laughed. You're getting older. Feeling tired is normal. Drew lowered his head, murmuring in torment. My God. I even bragged to my friends. I'm lucky to have such a caring wife. And now I see. I was nothing but a fool. I turned to him, my eyes blazing. No, Drew, not a fool, a puppet. And she pulled every string. Lieutenant Owens scribbled notes carefully, then looked up, her voice grim. We've seen this pattern before. The perpetrator convinces everyone that the victim is senile, then pushes them into a care facility, all while seizing control of assets. The difference here is that Lauren possesses medical knowledge. She knew exactly how to administer doses without drawing suspicion. Drew trembled, burying his face in his hands. I let my own mother become a victim in her own home. I placed a steady hand on his shoulder, my tone fierce with resolve. No, I'm still alive, and from this moment on, not a single drop of her poison will touch me again. Inside me, my fury burned into fire. Lauren hadn't just tried to poison my body, she had tried to poison my memories, my dignity, and even the bond between me and my son. And I swore that fire would not die until every truth was brought to light. The days that followed, I could not sleep soundly. Every time I closed my eyes, fragments of memories from the police station returned to haunt me. That evening, Drew and I sat with Lieutenant Cassandra Owens in the interrogation room. Slowly, I recounted everything. Lauren often brought me bottles of so-called imported supplements, claiming they would sharpen my memory and strengthen my heart. The labels were in tiny Japanese letters I couldn't read. I trusted her, thinking my daughter-in-law cared. But every time I drank them, my heart would race, my head would spin, and I'd be bedridden for hours. When I asked, she just laughed. "You're imagining things. At your age, fatigue is normal." Drew's voice broke as he spoke. I never imagined I was just her mouthpiece, repeating every word she drilled into me. I clenched my fists, forcing calm. "Drew, don't you see? She didn't just poison me with medicine, she poisoned with words. Every moment of weakness, she branded as a symptom. Every memory I retold, she labeled as confusion. And you repeated it until even I began doubting myself." Drew collapsed onto his knees in front of me, tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me, Mom. I don't deserve to be your son." I laid a firm hand on his shoulder. "Drew, the fault is not yours alone. She is a master manipulator. Even I nearly believed I was losing my mind. How could you not? But from today onward, we no longer have the luxury of weakness." Lieutenant Owens interjected, her voice sharp. "Your story matches perfectly with what we've suspected in other cases. Lauren knew how to administer microdoses, draining a victim slowly until death came quietly. On paper, it appears natural. In truth, it's calculated murder." I closed my eyes, and a chilling image filled my mind. Me, lying lifeless, my breath fading, while everyone around nodded, saying, "Vivian has reached her time," no one knowing, no one believing, that I had been poisoned inside my own home. I opened my eyes, locking them onto Drew's. "No, I am not dead, and Lauren miscalculated. I will fight back, and this time, you must stand with me. No more hesitation." Drew looked up, tears still streaking his cheeks, but his eyes blazing now with determination. "I swear it. I will stand with you. Even if it's late, I will make this right." I gripped his hands tightly, my heart breaking yet resolute. "Remember this, Drew. Truth does not require apologies, but if you want redemption, you must help me bring everything into the light." 5 days passed like a slow nightmare. Lauren remained in intensive care, still in a coma but temporarily stabilized. Drew clung to me constantly, as though afraid that if he turned away for even a moment, another tragedy would strike. On Friday morning, Lieutenant Cassandra Owens returned. In her hand was a thick folder, its pages heavy like sealed verdicts. She placed it on the table, her eyes cold as steel. "We've reviewed Lauren Whitlock's background. Before marrying your son, she worked as a nurse's assistant for nearly 6 years. Her medical knowledge was more than enough to use drugs with precision. This was no accident." Drew swallowed hard, his face gaunt. "But why? She never showed hatred toward my mother. I don't understand." Lieutenant Owens spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "Mr. Langford, we also investigated your finances. Are you aware that you are the sole heir in your mother's will?" Drew nodded, hesitant. "Yes, but that has nothing to do with this. I've never wished for my mother to die, never wanted her inheritance." Owens's gaze cut into him. "But your wife did. We found emails and messages where Lauren repeatedly pressured Mrs. Langford to update legal documents. The pattern was consistent, planting doubts about her memory, pushing her to prepare for the future. She even consulted an attorney about financial guardianship procedures." Drew shivered, his voice faltering. "No, I didn't know. I thought she was just being cautious." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Not caution, Drew. A plan. First, make me appear senile. Next, legalize it with paperwork. Finally, seize everything while no one suspects a thing." Lieutenant Owens flipped through more pages, her tone dropping lower. We also spoke with some of Lauren's former neighbors. They clearly recalled seeing her purchase heart medication under false names in multiple places. When questioned, she claimed it was for an elderly acquaintance. Now, we believe that elderly acquaintance was you, Mrs. Langford. A wave of cold washed over me. Every memory of her so-called kindness, the drinks, the reminders now revealed itself as carefully measured drops of poison. Drew slammed his hand on the table, his voice breaking. My God, she once told me you probably had only a few years left. I thought she was helping me prepare emotionally, but now I see it was a prediction she intended to create with poison. A bitter laugh escaped me, the laugh of someone who had finally seen the mask torn away. Exactly. Lauren didn't foresee the future, she built it, and we nearly let her succeed. In Drew's eyes, remorse twisted into something new, rage and resolve. For the first time, I saw my son free of the chains of the woman he had once trusted without question. That afternoon, Lieutenant Cassandra Owens returned, but she wasn't alone. Beside her was a young woman whose face I recognized instantly, the waitress from Valenti's trattoria, the one who had quietly slipped me the note that saved my life on my birthday. She sat down, her hands tightly clasped, fingernails digging into her palms as if carving pain into courage. Her voice trembled, yet it carried unshakable resolve. Mrs. Langford, my name is Tiana Brooks. It's time I tell you why I gave you that warning note that night. Drew looked up, still stunned from everything we had recently uncovered. I gave a small nod, waiting. Tiana inhaled deeply, her eyes burning with grief. 3 years ago, my grandmother Mabel Carter died in a nursing home. On paper, they wrote it off as heart failure, but I never believed it. She was healthy, still gardening, still cooking, even planning to open a small shop. Then one day, she had a minor fall at the supermarket. The woman who helped her up introduced herself as a nurse's assistant. Her name was Lauren Peters. Drew flinched, his face going pale. Peters. That was Lauren's maiden name. Tiana nodded firmly, tears brimming in her eyes. After that, Lauren began visiting my grandmother regularly. At first, she was so kind, shopping, cooking, always saying she wanted to help. My family trusted her completely. But then she started planting doubts, saying Grandma forgot to turn off the stove, forgot appointments, repeated the same stories. At first, we defended her, but after seeing her so drained every time Lauren helped, even we began to waver. Tiana's hands tightened, her voice breaking. She gave us brochures about dementia, urged us to put Grandma into Magnolia Ridge Senior Care. 5 months later, Grandma was gone. The doctor signed the paper. Natural heart failure. But during my last visit, Grandma whispered to me that Lauren had been bringing her special vitamins. When I asked the facility, they refused to tell me, hiding behind medical confidentiality. I reported it to the police, but no one believed me. They said, elderly people with dementia often die of heart failure. It's normal. Her voice cracked into sobs. I felt powerless, until the night at Valenti's when I saw Lauren staring at your wine glass. That look was the same look I had seen before my grandmother's decline. I knew the same script was playing again, and I couldn't let another woman collapse the way my grandmother did. Drew buried his face in his hands, shaking uncontrollably. I clasped Tiana's hands tightly, my vision blurred with tears. You didn't just save me. You uncovered something far greater, that Lauren wasn't satisfied with one victim. She is a predator, wrapping poison in the disguise of care. Tiana nodded, her voice choked. I only wish I had realized sooner. I could have saved my grandmother, but at least I saved you. And I will keep standing with you so no one else has to die this way. I embraced her, my tears falling onto her shoulder. In that moment, I knew this was no longer just my personal tragedy. It was part of a chain of crimes, and Lauren stood at the center of it all. The next morning, Drew entered the room where I was resting. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he held a stack of documents. One glance was enough for me to know something was terribly wrong. "Mom," his voice cracked, "I have something to confess. 2 weeks ago, Lauren told me you had a serious, confused episode. She said you were panicking about finances, terrified that money was missing. When I came home, you looked exhausted, disoriented. Lauren handed me a set of papers, claiming they were prepared by your lawyer, and I let you sign them." I straightened sharply. "What papers?" Drew's lips quivered as he handed them over. "Limited financial power of attorney, with an attached codicil to your will. It states that if you were ever declared incapacitated, all your assets would immediately be transferred under my management." A wave of dizziness washed over me. I had never discussed such matters with any lawyer. My eyes blazed as I glared at my son, my voice slicing through clenched teeth. "Do you realize what you've done? You placed my entire life into Lauren's hands. One more certificate of incapacity, and I'd be finished." Drew broke down, collapsing to his knees, pounding his chest. "I was a fool. I thought you truly weren't well, and that signing those papers would protect you. I didn't know, I didn't see that I was nothing but her puppet." My heart hammered, but my voice stayed cold and steady. "Protect me? You call that protection handing her the legal right to strip me of my home, my land, my savings, to shove me into a nursing home and cloak my death with your signature?" Tears streamed down Drew's face. "I'm sorry. I believed everything she said. I believed you were senile, that you needed professional care. I was blind." I drew in a deep breath, forcing myself to remain standing. Then I said with finality, "Drew, listen carefully. Tomorrow, we meet with the lawyer. Every single document must be revoked. Not one signature of mine will stand. Lauren will never touch a single cent of mine." Drew nodded through tears, his face broken yet lit with determination. "I promise, I'll see it through." That evening, as Drew phoned the lawyer to arrange the meeting, I sat alone in my study. The yellow lamplight glowed over the stacks of financial files I had guarded for decades. I shuddered at the realization. Without Tiana's warning note, I wouldn't just have died. I would have been declared legally incompetent, my assets stripped, my death staged as natural in a nursing home. I rested my hand over the files, trembling but resolute, my eyes burning with fire. "Lauren, you calculated every step, but you misjudged one thing. I am not dead, and from now on, it will be you who pays the price." Exactly 1 week later, Lauren finally regained consciousness. Lieutenant Cassandra Owens called me, her voice measured but carrying an edge. "Lauren is awake. She's very agitated and keeps demanding to see you. If you agree, we can monitor the confrontation. It may help gather further evidence." I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave it all behind. But another part, the part that would never bow to injustice, wanted to look the woman who had tried to poison me in the eye. I answered plainly, "I will meet her, but Drew must come with me." The next day, Drew and I walked down the antiseptic-scented corridor together. 2 officers stood guard outside the door. When it opened, I saw Lauren. She was gaunt, her skin pale, an IV still taped to her hand. Yet her eyes were different, cold, predatory, the glare of a wounded hunter. The instant she saw me, she shifted into a show of concern, voice trembling. "Vivian, thank God you're all right. I was so worried about you." Drew stepped forward, shielding me. I stood still, my voice like ice. "Don't bother, Lauren. We know everything." For a moment, her face flickered. Then the fake tears flowed. "I don't understand. I was the one who nearly died. Someone must have tried to harm both of us." I fixed her with a steady stare. "No, Lauren, the target was me, and the trap was yours." Drew tightened his grip on my hand, voice shaky but firm. "Stop denying it. The police found medications in the house, forged documents, emails you sent. Everything points to you." Lauren sat up, her expression transforming into cold clarity. Her voice was crisp and sharp now. "Drew, everything I did was for us. Do you want to be tied down for life by an old woman past her usefulness?" I recoiled. Drew's face flushed with anger. "You call my mother that? She raised me alone, and you treat her like a burden?" Lauren sneered, a sound that chilled me. "Realism. Once she's gone, everything will be ours. I only sped up the process. She should be grateful." I laughed, bitter and hollow. Grateful to be poisoned slowly in her own home? Grateful to be turned into a senile woman so you can legalize the theft? Lauren, you're not just cruel, you're a demon in human skin. Drew gripped my hand, eyes filled with hot, red fury. Lauren smiled a venomous smile. "If not for interference, she would be gone. You should be grateful, not resentful." The air thickened as if waiting for a match to strike. I knew then the mask was gone. The true Allison the killer had shown herself. The room felt suffocating, every sound magnified. Lauren held herself with defiant arrogance. Drew trembled with rage. I gripped his hand to keep him from lunging. From the corner of the room came a calm, authoritative voice. "That's enough, Miss Whitlock." We all turned. Lieutenant Cassandra Owens had been quietly observing and now stepped forward, holding a small recorder with its red light blinking. Lauren's face went white with shock. "You set me up?" she spat. Lieutenant Owens walked closer, steady. "No setup necessary. You confessed everything. Your conspiracy to poison Mrs. Langford, the death of Mabel Carter, and the way you accelerated these ends. Every word is recorded." Panic seized Lauren. She flailed. "No, I was drugged. I don't remember. You can't use those words against me." I laughed, a dry, acid sound. "Oh, you said it clearly, Lauren. Not the ramblings of someone drugged. You planned it carefully, choosing your words, your scenes. If it was drug-induced, it has never sounded so lucid." Drew roared. "You ruined my mother, slowly poisoning her, turning her into a shadow in front of everyone. And you call that a favor?" Lauren curled her lip, sneering. "Yes, I almost succeeded. If you had been stronger, Drew, we would have had everything." Drew shook with fury. "Stronger? I'd rather be weak than watch my mother die by your hand." Lieutenant Owens signaled, and 2 officers entered with cuffs in hand. "Allison Whitlock, you are under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud." Lauren screamed, wild and frantic. "No, you can't do this. Drew, say something. You're my husband. Defend me." Drew looked at her with a slow, cold resolve. "No, Lauren. From now on, I protect only one person, my mother." The cold clink of metal closed around Lauren's wrists. She shrieked, cursed, and fixed me with a glare full of spite. "Vivian, you will pay for this. Instead of a peaceful death, I'll make you live in fear." I stepped forward, voice steady and unyielding. "No, Lauren, I will live. Breathing each day, awake and present, that is the punishment for you." The officers led her away. The door slammed shut, leaving the room eerily quiet. Drew and I sat in silence, tears streaming. We knew the battle was not entirely over, but the monster in our midst had been stripped of power. That night, as I finally fell into a fitful sleep, the phone rang. Lieutenant Owens's voice was calm but heavy. "Allison has agreed to cooperate to avoid the death penalty. But what she confessed will change everything. Prepare yourself." I sat bolt upright and called Drew into the living room. "What did she confess?" I demanded. A few seconds of silence. Then Lieutenant Owens replied, "Not only did she conspire to try to kill you, she admitted involvement in the death of Mabel Carter and at least 2 other elderly women over the past 4 years." I went numb. 2 more? Lieutenant Owens continued in measured tones. She called them her projects. Each victim was an older woman with assets and limited family. The method was the same. Ingratiate herself, drip small doses of medication until the victim weakened, then stage symptoms of dementia. When death came, it would be labeled natural. She treated it like an investment. Cold terror washed over me. Images of countless innocent elderly faces flashed through my mind. "She confessed everything?" I whispered. "Yes," Owens answered. "She described doses, psychological tactics, and the step-by-step plan. With her confession and our evidence, she will not escape. Life imprisonment without parole is likely." My knees trembled. The rage faded into a hollow, aching sadness. How many lives had been stolen by calculated cruelty? Drew slammed his fist on the table in shock and sorrow. I lived beside a serial killer. I trusted her more than my own mother. If I hadn't woken up, she would have taken my mother too. I reached for my son's hand. "No, Drew. What matters is you woke up. We are alive, and we must live for the ones who cannot." "Lieutenant," Owens sighed down the line. "I've seen many cases, but Allison's cruelty goes beyond comprehension. She didn't kill out of rage or revenge. She killed as a cold calculation for gain. We will present this to the press and prepare the case for court in the coming days." I set the phone down, trembling. In the quiet that followed, I could hear only my heartbeat, a steady reminder that I survived, and that I must speak for those who cannot. 5 months later, Allison Whitlock's trial opened in the Dallas County Criminal Court. The courtroom was packed, every witness seat filled, the gallery jammed with family members, reporters' cameras flashing like staccato lightning. The air felt taut, as if it might slice. I sat in the witness row, my chest heavy. The next 2 weeks would peel back every lie, reveal every drop of poison, and expose each life taken under the guise of natural causes. On the first day, the prosecutor rose, voice ringing. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear of a woman who weaponized care. The defendant didn't merely attempt to murder one victim. She systematically preyed on the elderly, turning compassion into a tool for homicide. This is not negligence, this is deliberate conspiracy." The defense lawyer immediately countered. "My client suffers from a severe personality disorder. She cannot be held fully responsible. What the prosecution calls conspiracy may be the product of pathological compulsion." My blood boiled. If this was a disease, it was a disease of insatiable greed. On the second day, I took the stand. Hundreds of eyes bore into me, but I did not falter. I recounted the night of my birthday, the urgent note, the swapped glasses, the moment Lauren collapsed. I spoke with the pain of one who had nearly been killed, but with the clarity of a survivor. The prosecutor asked plainly, "Mrs. Langford, do you believe that if you had not been warned that night, you would be dead?" I looked directly at the jury. "I do not believe. I know. Lauren had been poisoning me for months. That night was to be the final act. I am living proof." The courtroom fell silent. Some people dabbed at their eyes. On the 4th day, Tiana Reynolds took the stand. Her voice trembled but rang with conviction. "My grandmother, Mabel Carter, died after Lauren cared for her. No one believed me then. But when I saw Lauren staring at Mrs. Langford's glass, I knew the same script was playing. I stopped it." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor hailed Tiana as a quiet hero. In the days that followed, evidence mounted. Search histories showing Lauren looked up lethal digitoxin doses, how to fake dementia, and making death look natural. The heart medication bottles discovered in Drew's house, the forged legal documents I'd signed under pressure, and more. The defense attempted to plead for treatment instead of prison. She needs help, not incarceration. But the prosecution struck back. Help for what? When she researched how to kill? When she staged the deaths to seize assets? This is not illness, it is evil disguised as caregiving. On sentencing day, the judge hammered the gavel with unwavering finality. Allison Whitlock, guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, elder abuse, and document forgery. Sentence: life imprisonment without parole. The courtroom erupted, some in applause, others in sobs. I remained still, not celebrating. There was no triumph in my heart, only the cold emptiness left in the wake of such betrayal. The woman who once called me mother had been revealed as a serial killer. Drew took my hand, whispering through tears. "We survived, Mom, but I'll never forgive myself for trusting her." I answered softly, "Forgiveness isn't to forget, it's to keep living. You must live for me and for those who can no longer speak." After the trial, I knew I couldn't return to my old home. Every wall, every cup seemed to echo with Allison's lies. Even stepping into the living room brought back her voice. She must have forgotten again, like a jagged blade. I moved to a small house by Lake Lanier, a humble place with a wooden porch and a garden roomy enough to plant flowers and vegetables. In the mornings, sunlight spread over the lake, and I dug, planted, and felt my hands in the earth, the soil beneath my nails, the sweat on my back. These became rites of healing. No more poison, no more pretense, only life taking root. Drew started spending more time with me than ever. Some days he would quietly clean the kitchen. Other days he'd sit on the porch watching me tend the garden. His eyes still held the shadow of what he'd nearly allowed, and they filled with tears whenever he looked at me. During a family therapy session, Drew confessed, choked with emotion. Part of me always suspected something was wrong, but believing Mom was losing her faculties was less painful than admitting my wife was a murderer. I chose the easier lie. I held his hands firmly. Cowardice is to permanently refuse the truth. You looked, you admitted it. That's courage. Learn to forgive yourself, for you have chosen to make things right. Tears fell, but they were not entirely bitter this time. They were cleansing. I started to resume parts of my old life. I returned to the senior exercise class, joined the library book club, and took a painting course, dreams set aside long ago. My first paintings were clumsy, but each stroke was a claim that I still had life and voice. One afternoon, as I painted a crimson sunset over the lake, Drew stood quietly behind me and whispered, "Mom, you've never looked stronger." I set my brush down and smiled. Strength isn't from being unharmed. It's from standing despite the harm. We didn't let evil win. As the sun sank and painted the water in gold, I understood that though betrayal had stained my days, life still offered colors to paint anew. Tiana became a constant presence in my renewed life. She visited on weekends, bringing freshly roasted coffee. We would sit on the porch, watching the water, sharing stories only the two of us truly understood. The waitress, who once was a stranger, had become the granddaughter I never had. One quiet afternoon, Tiana surprised me. "I want to study law. I want to help protect the elderly, to make sure no one else falls prey." I gripped her hand, voice thick. "No, you saved me. If anyone deserves credit, it's you. But if you become that change, then perhaps my pain will have purpose." Our bond gave me strength. I realized if I stayed silent, Allison would drift into the archives of criminal records as just another name. Outside, other predatory Allisons could still be preying on the vulnerable. I could not let my suffering end without purpose. I began speaking to community groups at churches, libraries, community centers, telling my story. About the taste of poison masked as nutrition drinks, the dizzy spells dismissed as age, and the way a caretaker could rewrite a life into senility. Each talk ended with people coming up to me with trembling hands and stories of their own. A 72-year-old woman whispered, "My son made me sign bank papers. I thought I was paranoid. After hearing you, I feel less alone." A middle-aged man wept, describing his father's sudden decline after a new caretaker arrived. Stories poured in not for pity, but for courage. I realized the hurt I'd endured had become a key that opened doors for others to speak. Local media took notice. They called me the survivor who spoke. But I wanted more. With Tiana, I started campaigning for stricter oversight of care homes and for workshops teaching families to spot signs of elder abuse. At a conference on elder rights, I looked out over the audience. Drew sat in the front row, his face full of steady pride. Beside him, Tiana scribbled notes. I inhaled, then addressed the room. If one story can save a life from a similar fate, then every tear, Every sleepless night was not in vain. I am no longer a victim. I am a voice for justice. Applause filled the hall. In that moment, I felt Allison's power evaporate. The power now belonged to truth, and I was its teller. 8 months after that dreadful birthday at Valenti's, my life had turned a new page. I lived by the lake, waking each morning to brew tea and sit on the porch. No more nights tormented by lapses or sudden dizzy spells. I knew now those symptoms had been the slow fingerprints of poison. Drew visited every Sunday. We cooked, laughed, and weeded the garden like the old days. Our bond, once cracked by betrayal, was slowly being restored through honesty and care. One autumn afternoon, as I sorted the mail, I found an envelope with no return address. The handwriting on the front sent a chill through me. I recognized it. Lauren. I carried it inside and sat down, debating whether to open it. At last, I steeled myself. Inside, her handwriting sprawled across the paper, venom wrapped in ink. Vivian, you won this small game, but don't think I'm powerless. Behind these bars, I am treated with more respect than you are. A few more years of life won't change the inevitable. You will still die. I intended to give you a merciful end. Now you will spend your days trembling, haunted by the thought that I still watch you. Her words clawed at me, but instead of fear, I felt something like release. I laughed, a bitter, short laugh, but liberating. Her letter was meant to chain me with dread. Instead, it proved she remained empty and clinging to a power she no longer had. I stood, lit the letter, and watched the flame eat the ink until only ash drifted into the air. I let the ashes go with a breath, seeing them scatter into the blue. In that moment, it felt as if the last traces of her hold over me burned away. Sitting back down with a cup of coffee, I thought of all I had lost, my naive faith in unconditional kindness, and all I had gained. An inner strength, the return of my son, and a purpose to warn and protect others. I whispered softly, "My name is Vivian Langford. I survived an attempt on my life carried out by my daughter-in-law. I tell this not as a victim, but as a warrior. Every morning I wake and breathe is a victory, and the sweetest revenge against someone who tried to bury me alive." My story has ended, but the message remains. I want to ask you something. If one day you notice unusual signs in your family manipulation, abuse, or anything that makes you suspicious, will you remain silent or will you stand up? Share your thoughts or your story in the comments below. I truly want to hear from you. And don't forget, hit like to support. Subscribe so you don't miss future stories. And share this video to help others stay vigilant and find the courage to protect themselves and their loved ones. Remember, you are never alone.